Hello, today we are going to paint a gray feature cast study, and we're going to start out with titanium white and ivory black. These are the only two colors that we're going to be using for this painting. You could use a little linseed oil if you need to move the paint around a little more. Other than that, that's it. Palette knife and a palette pad, or what I'm using is just a piece of glass on top of a gray uh, palette paper. Now what I'm doing here is I just actually match the value of the shadow on the lower lip, which is pretty much the shadow all over on the feature cast. So here I am trying to get the value for the backdrop, which is the gray around the feature cast. Here I'm trying to get the half tone, and this will be the average of the cast. So this would basically be the white, what I just here. This is actually the, I know we're going pretty quick here. This is the shadow value for the cast shadow on the surface of the background. Okay, and that's it. So if you were working from a photograph, you do the exact same thing. If you're working from life, you do the exact same thing. You would just take the palette knife and hover it over the area that you want to try to scan as far as the value. In this case, it's just simply the value, not necessarily the color. All right, so blocking in, what I want to do is I want to create the background first, so that when I start painting the values on the feature cast, I will have something to judge those values by. So also notice too, as I'm moving away from the upper right hand corner, the averages are getting slightly darker, and the reason for that is that the light is hitting the upper right hand corner a little bit more than it's hitting the lower left hand corner. It's just just the way that the light is, or the shadows are kind of fading out from the light source. All right, so they tend to get darker as they get further away. Okay, so this is now the cast shadow, okay, on the backdrop, and I'm going to start making it, yeah, just blocking it in to some degree. Now this is all one value. I'm not finessing anything. I'm not adding any other value except just filling in that big shape. Because the shape is one basic value. The only thing that changes would be the edges. And now another reason why we do these gray studies is not just to learn about values, but it's also to learn about paint control, paint handling, okay, brush handling, I should say, and how we go about painting the forms, how we paint the forms, the brush strokes that we use in specific areas, edges, obviously, like we're doing right now in the video. Notice how, like, the anatomy of a shadow, it's a little stronger where the where the form hits the area that's the surface that's casting the shadow. So you have a hard edge closest to the shadow, to the form, and as that form, I should say, as that cast shadow dissipates, what happens then is the shadow edges get softer. That's usually a good rule of thumb when we're painting the shadows. And you can see it; it's visible. Just really look hard. You'll see these slight idiosyncrasies. All right, now I'm painting in. If you can tell that the left side of the feature cast is not as bright as the right side of the feature cast, well, that stands to reason because we're painting lips, which are part of the mandible in the anatomy sense, and one side is darker than the other because it's a cylindrical effect happening around the lips. It's slight, but it's definitely there. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm massing in the big shadow shapes along the lower left-hand corner. It seems to get a little darker. It almost gets as close to the shadow value, but not quite. What that's signifying is that that value is turning that form to the point where it's turning into the shadow. So it's a significant curve in that form of the chin. So now what I'm doing is I'm starting to look at the shadows in and around the side, the left side of the lips. And you're going to see now, I'm actually going to start to paint, and the, also too, mind you that these are still the values that I pre-mixed earlier. I know I did it pretty quick, but you will take your time and mix the values accordingly. And you're going to hover your palette knife over each area until you have about 4 values of the cast and maybe a couple of values for the backdrop too. Now, as you can see, we have the left side being slightly darker than the right side. And now I'm massing in the top lip. I'm working on slight gradations out of the shadow, thinking about my shadow shapes there. Also, in here too, so we have just under the lower lip, there's that little, I guess the beginning of the jowl or just the underplane of the bottom lip. We want to mask that in, and we want to try to get that as close in value as possible. The idea here is to mask the values, and a good way, a very effective way to do this is by squinting. And when you squint, you'll see those subtle value shifts that you won't see when you're looking at a form bright, totally wide-eyed. All right, so here we are. We got basically what looks like a mosaic. There comes a time where in the painting where it looks a little wonky, and this is definitely the time. A lot of the values are not placed in the right areas, but eventually they will get filled in. And as you can see, I'm working basically with my my value, that's the value of the shadow on the backdrop, okay, the gray area, and I'm just painting in values that are coinciding with what I'm seeing in the photograph. Now I apologize, now the photograph's a little off to the left, but if you guys are following along, you'll be able to see this most definitely, and you'll see the slight, very, very slight value shifts. Now this is painted from a photograph, so we're not going to pick up the slight nuance, but we're going to get a general feel. And this is actually a good practice to do if you have a printer at home, or you can print out a color picture in black and white. I suggest doing this because this is a great way to understand values and to create form. And we're doing this rather quickly. This video or this painting, I don't think it took any more than an hour, maybe 90 minutes, an hour and a half or so. So, and they shouldn't take too long. We're not trying to do a photographic copy at all. We're trying to understand the values. And the more that you do these value sketches, the better you're going to get at seeing values and massing in those values in the beginning. Because when we work to create realistic form, three-dimensional form, I keep telling the students it's not about the detail that creates realism. It's about the value relationships that create realism. Okay, any video you watch on YouTube, any realist artist, academy-based artists will always talk about value first over any detail. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're just really trying to get 3-dimensional. We want these lips to look like they're just jumping out as they are in the photograph. We want to feel that roundness of the form. We want to feel the projection. We want to feel the values. We want to feel the atmosphere around the air, basically, by the softer edges, by the subtle lights in the shadow, the reflective lights, all those things. So now, actually, you can see it's actually coming around that area, yeah, in the lower right-hand corner. I left that open just so I can keep my hand, if I had to rest my hand to do any little close work into the upper lip, it was open for me, or else I'd have a hand filled with gray paint. So I am painting this flat on a tabletop, so that's why I had to do that. If I had painted this on an easel, I would have painted the whole backdrop. All right, so now I'm looking into the edges. I'm looking into, now I'm seeing that this area actually it's a little darker. So the what I was talking about earlier, how that gray, okay, the gray background, the gray surface in the background, actually gradates. And now it's hard to believe that there could be a gradation in about, I don't know, let's say 8-9 inches of surface area. But it does happen, right? Even it happens in life. I see it more happening when I work from life than I do working from photographs. So we have to understand that if the light is hitting a one specific side, in this case it's the upper right hand corner, then those averages are going to get slightly darker as they dissipate away from, let's say, the point of impact where the light is hitting the surface, which in our case is in the upper right hand corner. I know I'm belaboring the point, but it's very important to understand that, because when we do still lives, I see so many times people paint like a surface of a tabletop, and they don't understand that there is going to be, if light is on one side coming in from, let's say, the right side, your left side surface is definitely going to be darker all the way to the far left, okay? And then the far right will be nice and bright because it's right in the line of the light effect, or the sun, or window light, whatever's lighting up your still life. So always keep that in mind, that there's always a gradation. Just like there's gradations in drapery, just like there's gradations in, when we paint a portrait, okay? We know that the highlight's going to be on the forehead, and the cheeks and the jawline will probably be a little bit darker, depending on if the light is above and 3/4. All right, so here I'm adjusting some of the values now. So I'm seeing that I have to get a little darker. I'm still looking at the reference picture, and I'm trying to adjust where those big shadows are. I can see that I want that chin to turn. I definitely want that to turn in space and move back, kind of disappear there. Now there's a little accent just right there, just where the plane of the lower lip meets the outward plane of the chin. Yeah, so here we go. We're moving along. The lip shape. Now I'm actually making those lip shapes on the upper right hand corner just a little darker, because if I was looking at this, in life, I would probably see a little bit more. Unfortunately, photographic colors tend to wash things out a little bit. So the idea here is to paint a little bit more in those areas, so that, and what I mean by that is just paint a little bit more of the form, because we can always go back and lighten certain areas just a little bit, because we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose the form. And what I'm talking about specifically is the form of the upper lip. And you'll see that I'll go back and I'll soften the edges, so it corresponds with the picture or reference picture on the left. Now here I'm just adding bits of dark area right here. And you can see now where I'm transitioning into the upper lip here. Sorry about the transition there, but there we go. So we're now we're full on. We have that area right there, really just kind of pushing through. We're getting softer edges. I'm looking at the contrasts again. I'm trying to really get those shapes honed in a little bit more. I don't get them exactly the way they are in the photograph. I think the little round part of the upper lip probably could have been a little bit more defined. I don't think I go back and fix that at all. But I'm happy with the results. I really just wanted to get the form in here as fast as possible, and just get that feeling. So you people at home, following along, you understand the principles. Now, what I'm doing here, as far as the palette's concerned, I'm trying to match and mix values on the palette that, again, correspond with what I'm seeing right now. It gets a little tricky when it comes into the light areas, because we have a tendency to not see a lot of subtle changes. And if there aren't any, well, don't paint what you don't see, or you shouldn't be painting what you're not seeing, because it's it creates a little compromise in the image. Just paint what you see. Be true to what you see, as far as your recording of those shapes, um, and take your time. Don't rush. I mean, this is definitely sped up, and maybe I did paint this a little faster just to get through the demonstration, so that you guys would have something to reference today, and while you're working along with me. You guys have the benefit of slowing down the video, or just rewinding it a little bit, or stop pausing it and moving along. All right, so here I am doing a little bit to the upper lip. I'm seeing that there were some little areas that needed to be adjusted, so I'm adjusting them now. And mainly, it's really the softer transitions, from light to dark, to the half tones. Here, I see like a very high light that's just sitting right in the crux of those two shapes. And it's odd, but sometimes you'll see that happening in a painting where the highlight's not on the peak of a form where it rounds out, but it might be like in the crevice. It happens. It just happens where the light just happens to hit that crevice more than it hits like a protruding round or oval shape, or any protruding shape. So watch out for those little things, because they actually add really more to the realism of the of what you're painting, especially in this academic sense. So here we're seeing a little bit of the light come through, and if we took a chunk of that side of the mouth and then brought it over, or took that color that we were just using on that left side and brought it over to the right side, you would see a marked difference, darker value from the left to the right. So keep those things in mind. You can actually see if you squint. And that's why we have to try to stay true to those values, and keep checking them with your palette knife. Try to get the right value in the right places. Now here we are again. This is probably getting to the last. I'm edging out some of the shadows here. I'm trying to just soften, just to get it to be a little bit more finished looking. There's no detail. It's really just trying to soften edges at this point, adding slight gradients here and there where they're needed. A lot of times these feature casts, or any casts, they just get dirty, right? And they'll have like finger marks on them. And if you're going to do something where you're going to do a very profound study, then I would say, yeah, paint all those things. And if you were going to do like a full color painting of a cast under natural light, you'd be subject to doing a lot more, because then you'd have to deal with color and value as well. So here I'm coming back. This is the finishing touches here. I'm going in, and there's a little bit of reflective light around the top lip, on just under the top lip. It almost has like a pillowing effect, where the bottom lip, which is it's basically the top plane, and that top plane is so bright, it's just bouncing color right into that rounded part of the upper lip, and I'm trying to get that shape to be as close as possible. Here I'm seeing that there's a little area where it gets a tiny bit darker. The one thing with white is, when we paint white, is that our values stay pretty much constant. Well, there it is. That's the actual painting. And thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Uh, Put a like or thumbs up, or if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Okay, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye now.